Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary. Yeah, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to do that to you. Oh, welcome to the Halloween bonus episode where we're going to be telling some scary stories and sharing some personal experience with paranormal. My name is KJ, and you're listening to the Supernatural Opinions podcast, where some things in this world are supernatural. My pronouns are she, they, and this is the podcast where I talk to my fellow Supernatural fans about Supernatural, and we share our supernatural opinions. I have a lot of mixed feelings about where I sit on ghosts. I have had a few experiences that I wouldn't say I could explain super easily if ghosts don't exist, but I'm also not really fully prepared to to just be ghosts are real. But yeah, I don't know. I've definitely had some weird experiences, so I'm down for old places being haunted, kind of. I don't know, it scares me a little, but if I'm honest, the idea that ghosts are real is scary to me. So anyway. First up, Frances has a story about her grandfather seeing a woman in white, followed by Jordan, who has another woman in white story local to her in North Carolina.
I did a little research, and then I have a personal backstory that kind of ties into it too.
Yeah, tell us that.
Cool. So, like you guys have been saying, there's different versions and variations of Bloody Mary in mythology and all of history and whatnot. And the same is true for in the first episode, the Lady in White and La Llorona and all these other different, myths. And my grandpa actually had seen about 30 years ago or so, a version of the Lady White in this town that we used to live in, or he used to live in.
That sounds terrifying.
Yeah,
oh my god.
It was late at night. He was driving by the train tracks, and there was just this lady. He described it as a white wedding dress, a simple one, not a poofy one. And she was just walking down the train tracks, and I would have been terrified if I was him.
Yeah, that hits all the boxes, honestly.
It's a hard pass.
He saw that Lady in White. There's a whole bunch of different Lady in Whites around the world, and same with Bloody Mary. There's a whole bunch of different variations.
So there actually is a Lady in White story where I live too.
Really?
Yeah. It's I don't know a whole lot about it, but I know it's in the book of Ghosts of the Carolinas. Let me Google it real quick.
Please do. I feel like there are a lot of ghosts in the Carolinas.
Oh, for sure. Her name is Lydia. She's the ghost of the Jamestown Bridge.
Okay.
She's the phantom hitchhiker of Jamestown Bridge.
She's got a name, too. That's pretty...
She does. Let's see. Lydia has been seen on rainy and foggy nights as she walks alone or stands beside the road searching for help to get back home. The legend of Lydia is based on sightings and stories over the past 70 or more years of a young woman in white as she stands by the road attempting to flag down passing motorists for help. The ghost is believed to be that of a young woman who died tragically at the bridge many, many years ago. The stories have grown around the alleged sightings, share a common detail, a fatal car accident that occurred as a boy and a girl drove to a dance, perhaps the prom, on a rainy night. Since that accident, the spirit of the girl wearing the formal dress returns to the scene, seeking help.
Up next, Emmy's going to tell us about a field trip she took to a haunted house in Connecticut. Yeah, what's the deal with Connecticut?
It's supposed to be, I don't know. I saw, I went to this, it was, old historic house in, my town. That was just, it's, just a historic landmark. I don't even know what it is. It's not, anything important. It's just from, the 1700s, and it's been there forever. And I guess, ghost hunters or something came at one point, and, I went on a field trip there when I was, in 5th grade. When I was Tyler's age. And that shit was, it was so cold in there for no reason, and I don't know. I thought it had a creepy vibe. My friend thinks she saw a face somewhere. I don't know. So I'm not saying that Connecticut ghosts are common, but they're a little bit common in my experience. In my completely invalid experience.
Meredith, I don't think you've shared one either. You have one. And you used to live in a somewhat haunted apartment, so.
But all I heard were breathing noises, and there was a mouse. But
that's fair.
Oh yeah, I had a ghost story too.
You have a ghost story. Tell us a ghost story.
Yeah, I think I I mentioned this one when we first came up with the idea, but I don't know if we were recording. So this actually happened to my mom. She used to live by herself in a different city, before she got married. And it was just her and her cat. And she came into her apartment one night, and I think her brother and her friend were there, and they were all like members of our church, which will be important later. And she told me that her cat was freaking out for some reason. She didn't know why. And also it felt darker than usual.
That's never good.
Just had a very bad feeling about the apartment, but nothing extreme happened. But then her brother and her friend actually said a blessing in the apartment, and the cat calmed down and the bad feeling was gone.
That's a little nerve-wracking, not gonna lie.
The power of Christ really did compel them.
It also makes me nervous as an atheist who doesn't know a lot of churchy things. What do I do? Because I wouldn't be able to just think of a blessing. That's not something I would be able to think of. Also, I'm not sure it would work even if I did. Because
in Christianity, you have to have priesthood.
Mm-hmm. I mean, if it works, and we won't ask too many questions about it.
It's fine. Just don't poke it too much.
Yeah. If it works and you didn't have to call a priest, just count yourself lucky and try not to think about it again.
All the guys in my church are given the priesthood, so it's very convenient because I can just call my brother.
That is helpful.
So I have to go to the local pastor.
Okay, our next two stories are both from JJ. He wrote in via our email address with these two stories, and he said, put whichever one in that I like, but the truth is, I liked both of them. So, happy Halloween, everyone, you're getting both. These are all written in first person, and I'm just going to read them as JJ wrote them. So again, this is JJ's two stories, they're not mine. My childhood home was haunted, very haunted. It was an old Victorian home in the small mining town I grew up in for most of my life. From the first day that we moved in, there was activity, and me being a child at the time was terrified of it. We had everything from hearing footsteps above us, doors opening and closing on their own, and once in a while a window broke from the inside. I refused to be alone in any room in the house. The only time I was comfortable with it was if I could see people. In the home was my mom, grandma, uncle, brother, and myself. My uncle is mentally ill, and he only lived with us on the weekends and lived during the week in a group home that could better care for him. One weekend he came home with a little tree to be planted. It was a pine tree, and he was excited to find a spot for it. He went out and planted it, but did so right up against the house. For some reason I thought I'd be the reasonable one in the family and put up a fuss over the placement. I said it would grow up too quickly and destroy our home. Everyone told me to just leave it, and I should have, but instead of listening and realizing they'd tell him it wasn't a good spot, I went out and tore it out and threw it to the ground. This got me in trouble. The layout of the first floor is important here. When you walked into the house, there was an enclosed porch, then a little mud room between two doors. From there you come into that main hall. To your right was the staircase that went up 6 to 8 steps, then a landing before going up even more stairs around a corner. In the hall, if standing in the front of the stairs facing towards the rest of the home, to the left was the living room. At the end of the hall was the entrance to the dining room. In the dining room there was a living room to the side, the kitchen towards the back side, and off to the other side the computer room. In the dining room there was a little bit of wall between the entrance and to the computer room and the hall. This is where I was told to sit and face when I got in trouble. My mom and grandma were in the computer room, my mom helping my grandma with something on her computer, my uncle was in the kitchen, and my brother was not home at the time. While I was there facing the wall, tears in my eyes, I looked over to the staircase. I don't know what compelled me to do so, but I did. I saw a woman at the base of the staircase, and it was like I could see through her almost without her being totally transparent. She had on a long brown dress with white flowers on it. Her hair was pulled up into a tight yet messy bun. It was brown with wisps of gray. It wasn't like a messy bun we'd see today, but rather what you'd expect of a woman in the early 1900s. She had this calming energy to her, and my crying stopped as I watched her. She looked at me and smiled kindly before she put a hand on the railing and turned to look up the stairs. I watched as she climbed the stairs and turned the corner to where I could no longer see her. My mom, noticing that I was no longer crying, turned to me and asked if I was ready to apologize to my uncle. Instead of telling her yes, I immediately told her what I saw. My family is no stranger to the paranormal. I was raised around it, grew up believing in it, and experiencing it. Everyone in my family has a long history of experiences, and now as an adult, it's just normal. So instead of telling me I was just seeing things, my mom believed me. It must have been how I said it, I don't really know. She told me that the woman I saw was probably friendly and not there to scare me, and I felt her words to be true. In town, not far away from our home, was a pharmacy that had been there since the early 1900s, still owned by the same family. Wendy, the pharmacist, was a family friend, and her grandmother was the original owner of the home that we lived in. The next week, my mom had to go pick up some medication she needed and told her of what I saw and described the woman. Wendy had grown up in the house, given that it was her family home for most of the century up until we moved in. The next day, she had the day off and came over to give us a visit. She brought an old photo album and sat down at the kitchen table where we all gathered to chat and whatnot. She told me to look through it, and I did, flipping the pages, looking at her family throughout the years until I landed on a photo of a woman. Shocked, I pointed her out to my mom, telling her that that's the woman I saw. Wendy told me that it was her grandmother who the house was originally built for by her grandfather. She had lived and died in the house and was the kindest woman Wendy had ever known. She then told me that she had seen her many times after she passed. Even her children had seen her. This brought me a lot of comfort. I knew that the woman I saw wasn't scary, wasn't there to harm me in any way, and was just a kind woman who also lived there. After that, and until I was 13 when we moved out, I was 9 when this took place, I saw her on several occasions, and each time I felt the same comforting feeling. And this is JJ's second story, which is a bit more recent. I'm really glad he sent this one in. You'll see why at the end of the episode when I tell my own haunted story. My husband's mother's home is haunted by 2 cats. First, there's Paddles, a cat they had before I came into my husband's life. You'd see him sometimes jumping onto my mother-in-law's bed or jumping off, just out of the corner of your eye. Sometimes you feel the soft fur of a tail raised up, brushing against your hand, and yet no cat to be seen. But if you were making food, especially the foods he would be snuck while cooking, you would feel him at your feet in the kitchen. Then there's Boofus, named for the sound she made when she accidentally fell from the landing onto a pile of laundry. Boofus passed away earlier this year after a lengthy battle with kidney problems. I currently do not live with my husband. He lives at the house because he is his mom's caretaker and he was his Nana's. One night I was just getting ready for bed and I got a call. Parker, my husband, was crying, telling me to please come to the house. He could barely get the words out, so I messaged his mom and she told me that Boofus had passed. He loved her dearly and had been the one to pick her out at the shelter when he was 15 years old. I went to the house immediately and sat with the 2 of them and Boofus saying our final goodbyes. He asked me to stay the night with him, which I did, of course. I told him he should go back to his room and try to relax, and I'll be there in a few minutes. When he went back downstairs to the 2nd floor, I stayed on the 3rd. The 3rd floor is his mom's area with the TV room, bathroom, and her bedroom. I made us a pot of coffee and went into her room to sit with her to help her figure out the next steps. In her room, she sat on her desk and I sat at the crafting table, both in view of the hallway leading to the TV room where Boofus still was. Ghost, the other cat, was napping on his little bed in front of her dresser, which we could both see clearly. Boofus in her last year was thin, but before then she was a large cat. Most importantly, she was very heavy on her feet. She was the least graceful cat I've ever seen. You could hear her jumping off of things, running down the halls, you name it. As we sat there, in a moment of silence, we heard the sound of Boofus jumping off the table in the TV room and coming down the hall. The sound disappeared just before the doorway to her room, but then Ghost looked up and his eyes followed something at his eye level and over towards the bed. We looked at each other and smiled. Of course Boofus would die and immediately just continue on with her old routine. She still does this. You'll see her sometimes jumping off and on the bed, sitting at the top of the landing on the stairs, in exactly the middle of the house during thunderstorms. It's like she never left, just invisible now. That is so heartwarming. I love that so much. I'm really sorry your family lost Boofus this past year. Jordan is now going to relay us a personal ghost story that's either comforting or extremely terrifying. We can't really figure out which.
I did have like one kind of, I can't quite explain it experience when I was in high school.
We'll take that.
So we were living in my grandparents' house when both my grandparents had died a couple years or about a year prior. And we were living in their house and my mother was renovating it and everything. My mom was at work one day and I was in the shower and I heard
the worst time to have a weird experience.
Oh no.
And I heard what sounded like someone like bang, like on the door.
Oh, God.
And the door like shook and opened. And there was, and I thought like it was my mom or, you know, maybe her boyfriend or something because he was kind of a jerk and he would do something like that. And so I like went outside of the shower, like stuck my head out and was like, hello, you know, nobody answered. I called my mom. My mom was at work and I was like, is there somebody like, is there supposed to be somebody coming to the house for anything today? And she was like, no, why? I was like, no reason. and so I let her go back to work and I didn't bring it up.
I got creeped on by a ghost.
But I got creeped on by a ghost. But like I kind of got this, it gave me this feeling like maybe it could have been like my papa because he would like yell at you for using too much water. And I was in the shower and to me, it felt like someone going like, turn that damn water off.
At least he like got like grandpa vibes and not like this ghost wants to kill me while I'm naked in the shower vibes.
Not like psycho vibes.
Well, we were also living in that house when we were watching The Exorcist one night, and we were home alone, like me and my best friend were home alone at my house, and we were probably like halfway through the movie, like right when it started to get into the possession and stuff, and we started hearing like a scratching in the attic, and I was like, and we're done.
No. Oh no.
It is well documented on this podcast that I do not like horror movies, and it's not that I don't like horror movies, it's that I get scared.